All right, next up we've got Alexandra Ushakova. Hello. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I'm a Russian student, and I haven't worked in any studio yet, but I study in university in Moscow, and I learn graphic design. But my passion is VFX, and I really love Houdini and creating visual effects. I have a little background with other 3D software, but for now Houdini is my most powerful and favorite tool.
So what are you going to be presenting on today?
I want to talk about my Mardini project. The topic of the day was escape, and I made some UFO that's chasing the car. And it took me about 20 hours to create, and it was a really great experience, so I want to share it.
Excellent. Well, let's jump in.
Hello everyone, my name is Alexandra. I'm a student from Russia. Basically, I study graphic design in Moscow University, but visual effects is my passion, and I love Houdini and making my own 3D animations in it. I've been learning Houdini for about 1.5 years now, and it's a very powerful tool that helps me create anything I want. Today I would like to present you my project that I have made in one day for Mardini Art Challenge, and let's see what we will talk about. First of all, I'll show you the animation itself, and we'll discuss such important things as references and especially time management, because I had only 24 hours to complete my project from scratch. Then we'll talk about modeling, because one of the requirements of the challenge was modeling inside Houdini, and third-party models were not allowed in the contest. I'll show you how I modeled the main object and the terrain in the scene. After that, we'll take a look at the animation, and it was the longest part of my pipeline, because I had to make chasing animation, lightning laser shooting animation, and of course road destruction simulation. And finally, I'll show you my lighting and camera setup for the rendering. So here is my project. The topic of that day was escape. As you can see, the plot was quite simple. Just a little car is being chased by a UFO and trying to escape from it. And most likely it succeeds, but obviously we'll never know. I used some reference images for the UFO, the road, the car, lightning bolt, and it made my modeling process a lot easier than if I was making it fully from my imagination or memory. So I highly recommend you to use as many references as you need to get a nice result. Let's talk a little bit about time management. In the Mardini Art Challenge, you've got only 24 hours to create, render, and submit your artwork. It means you have to carefully plan your time to make every step of your project in time. I had a list of things to do, and here I summarize how much time I spent for each task. As you can see, animation and rendering took most of my time, and I spent 21 hours in total for this project. Modeling in Houdini is quite cool. I like the way it works and that I can change any parameter whenever I want to. I initially wanted to make every object procedural, but then I realized that I can lose a lot of time trying to make everything fully procedural, so I had to sacrifice procedurality for the sake of having time to model all of the object and other tasks. Let's dive inside a UFO modeling node, and I've started from a simple flattened sphere, then I subtracted another sphere from it to make a hole for the main window. After that, I made a circle. Later I will be able to change the number of the points if I want to. I used an add node to delete geometry, but keep points, and projected them onto the body of the UFO. And this will be the little windows. I copied tubes and spheres on those points, created a group of polygons that look up, and also copied some tubes on it to make tiny bolts. To make the borders, I created an edge group and used minimum and maximum angle to select only one loop that I needed. I kept only this group and used an add node to connect all the points, and then an ends node to close my geometry. I used polywire for meshing my polyline, and after all these steps we get this UFO. And as I told you before, it's a little procedural, so I can change the number of windows and the whole geometry will be fine. Now let's take a look at how I modeled the terrain, and it's quite simple too. I've started from making the base noise, then I painted some areas and blurred it a bit, and I used this mask to lift up a couple of mountains. After that, I created a new mask from feature in slope mode, and I needed it to make some terraces on the side of the mountains. And then I distorted the whole terrain a little to make it look more interesting. I painted the mask to deepen the specific area, and then project the road onto my terrain. So the road itself was made from a simple curve, and then I extruded it to make it wider. I also used a road mesh to make another mask and blur the terrain in this area to make a transition between the road and the ground smoother. After that, I cleared the mask and eroded my terrain a little bit to make it more natural, and then I converted height fill to polygons and merged it with the road mesh. It's time to look at the animation in the project. First of all, we have got a chasing animation, and I have started from animating two boxes with a follow path constraint. So the boxes move along my curve that I used to create the road. I've set a couple of keys to make one box moving a little bit slower than another box, and then I've just parented these boxes to the UFO and the car, and now they're moving along the road too. After that, I needed to create a laser gun, and I took the animated UFO and extracted its centroid to get one point in the center of the UFO, and also needed to get one animated point from the curve. Using the carve node, I animated the second U parameter and extracted one point. And then I just merged these two animated points and put an add node to connect them. I didn't want the laser to be continuous, and to make it intermittent, I've put the switch node and written an expression so it could change the value from 0 to 1, and my line would disappear every n number of frames. I resampled this line, made some copies of it with a different animated noise in point warp. I also used curveview attribute to make sure every laser starts from the same position and doesn't have any noise in the beginning and in the end. I merged them together and made them thicker with a polywire node. So the laser is ready, and now we can make the destruction simulation. First of all, I needed my road mesh to prepare it for simulation. I used isOffset to create a lot of points in the middle of the road, and I've Voronoi fractured it so we get little pieces in the middle and the bigger pieces near to the edge. I measured their area and used this attribute to split them because I wanted to make bigger parts inactive during the simulation. I imported my animated road point and created a velocity attribute on it, and then I transferred this attribute to some points in the middle of the road, and I will use these points to control the force in my simulation. Inside DOP node, I made this simple distraction setup. I used multiple solver because I wanted to update my velocity and active attributes with a attribute transfer node, and I imported my terrain as a collider in the simulation. And this is how the simulation looks like after I cached it. When all the geometry and animations were ready, I had to set up my lighting in the scene. I haven't used any environment lights because I wanted to make a night scene, so the cars and the UFO's headlights were visible. We can see the spotlight's outline because of Redshift's volumetric scattering parameter in rope node. It creates a nice atmosphere and aerial perspective that helps you show the scale of your scene. Besides headlights, I've put two light sources. One is a bluish spotlight, and as you can see, it makes the scene lighter and gives nice dark blue shadows and also neutralizes the green tint a little. The second one is also a spotlight, but it has an orange tone and it gives warm accents to the background. Here I also compared the scene with and without this light. The last light source is a tonal light. It's very contrasting and bright, and because of this, the tonal seems to be safe for the car. The movement of my camera was really important because it had to make my scene more dynamic and show the tension of escape. And to make such complex movement, I've set a lot of keyframes, and as you can see, it moves a little bit faster than the car and the UFO. I used animation editor to make some curves smoother, so there is no too sharp movements. At this point, I would like to finish my presentation. Thank you all very much for watching till the end. I hope you were interested and maybe you even learned something new. I'm very grateful to SideFX for the opportunity to talk about my project and for the Mardini challenge. It was a very interesting experience and I hope to participate in a similar challenge in the future. Goodbye everyone!